cocktails and fishtales, featuring some Mola madness, more than you ever want to know, and everything wonderful. We're so excited to have you all tuning in this evening. Of course, this is our monthly science social that we do to get people pumped about some cool stuff happening, and we're so excited to have Liz here. She is hilarious and informative, and boy, oh boy, is this going to be a fun presentation. Of course, for those of you tuning in, we always love to know where you're watching from. And as we go along this evening, if you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the comments. I'll be kind of collecting those as Liz goes through her presentation, and then I will feed them her way at the end of the talk. And so you get to have your questions answered live. And I already have some pretty good questions. So before we get started, Liz, can you tell us what your favorite cocktail and fishtail is?
It's hard to say because there's so many good cocktails, and I have quite a history of fishtails. But I'm leaning like I would pay top dollar right now for a solid mojito, just a nice fresh mojito with fresh whatever green stuff. What is it, mint?
Mint. I think they have to slap the mint.
You got to slap the mint. You got to crush the ice. You got to put all the rum and whatever sugary goodness in there. So that sounds just delightful right now.
Would it potentially be a Mola mojito?
Like that definitely is a thing that I will invent, and I'll give you 20.
You heard it here, folks. It's been invented.
Yes, and then my fishtail would be I used to live in the Florida Keys as a fisheries biologist, as you do, and I got into spearfishing down there, and I used to hang out with a bunch of dudes that were like, "Oh, I'm the best spear fisherman. No, I'm the best spear fisherman." And so we all went out one day, and they had like big guns, like big spearfishing guns, like expensive toys, and I had like my little dinky pole spear, which is like a stick with a rubber band that you use, and I had been watching videos of people spearfishing big giant cobia off of sharks' backs, like because cobia will follow sharks and sort of pick off food. And I found there's a big old shark cruising around, and I was like, and with a big cobia on it. And I was like, I'm just going to go for it. And I managed to it's called stoning them, where you just kill them in one shot. And so I stoned a big cobia with my little dinky pole spear. And then they just had like some little baby hogfish basically at their haul. And so it's just one of those, as a woman in a male dominated hobby of spearfishing, it was just a really fun moment to be like, I just owned you guys and I don't even know what I'm doing. Also, I'm going to eat this whole cobia by myself. That's my fun fishtail of learning to spearfish. Also, don't just swim up to sharks and spear things off of them. That was not, in retrospect, that was a horrible decision. But I saw it on YouTube, so I thought it was a good idea at the time. So there you go.
We do know that everything you learn on the internet is true. So way to go.
Everything I'm about to tell you, I basically learned from the internet. So here you go. It's a wild ride.
So good. Again, for those of you tuning in, we are going to get started with a fabulous presentation featuring the Mola or Ocean Sunfish. And if you have any questions as we go along, put those in the comments. And I think from here, we'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Liz. Liz is the Washington Regional Manager for the Surfrider Foundation. I am delighted that I get to work with her as part of the South Sound chapter, leading the charge for all sorts of great environmental protection here in Washington State and beyond. And we've had the delight to host Liz doing this presentation before, and I had very, unfortunately, forgot to hit the record button. So again, this is a redemptive moment for me that the world gets to see the magic that is this presentation. And so I'm so excited to have round two, and I'll turn the stage over to you. So thank you so much for joining us for our May cocktails and fishtails.
Well, I am so stoked to be here, and I'm also stoked to work with you in a professional setting, but this is not going to be that. So yeah, you guys all, I'm assuming you can see my screen. I can't hear you because you're on Facebook Live, but so yeah, my name is Liz Schotman, and I am Surfrider Foundation's Washington Regional Manager by day and collector of weird fish facts by night. And I am what I describe as recreationally obsessed with ocean sunfish. I just think they're awkward and wonderful and weird. And I'm wearing my sunfish shirt, and I have a little sunfish napkin. And if you could see the wall behind me, it is covered in sunfish art. So that's just a little bit about me. So we're going to get going. Come on. Oh, there we go. So the ocean is full of mystery and really cool critters. And we're going to talk about a bunch of them. So when you hear the phrase really cool ocean critter, pray, what comes to mind? Well, my guess is if you live out into the Pacific Northwest, you might think of the orca, the killer whale, an apex predator and symbol of the Pacific Northwest. Each pod has its own distinct culture. It has different language, different prey, unique behaviors, and specific to their families. And they have matriarchal societies where the women kind of run the show, which I'm just saying, maybe we should give it a try. Men have kind of botched things. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. But or maybe like me, you spent a lot of your childhood obsessing over Shark Week, in which case perhaps your first thought was the great white shark, another apex predator simultaneously feared and revered around the world, dominating the deep almost as much as it dominates Shark Week, which I take issue with because there's a lot of cool sharks out there that deserve attention. Or maybe you're into doom scrolling about climate change, I feel ya, in which case you might have thought polar bear, the symbol of melting ice caps, an unwilling spokes animal for Coca-Cola. These deceptively adorable danger floofs are actually classified as marine mammals since they spend so much time out at sea. And one of my personal favorites, the whale shark, just stunningly beautiful and stunningly huge. They get up to 65 feet long and can weigh over 75,000 pounds. And they're mysterious in many ways. Like we don't know where they go to breed, but we do think they can live 100 to 150 years old. And each one is a unique and beautiful snowflake. You can identify them by their individual patterns of spots. And how about manta rays, the most majestic of the sea flaps, the graceful dancers of the deep? These guys are often seen doing backward somersaults while they're feeding, because why wouldn't you if you were this just fantastical flying pancake with scoopy shovel face? These guys can actually have a 30-foot wingspan. So that's like 2 Toyota Camrys back to back. And fun fact, they have the largest brain of any fish. A recent study showed that they can recognize themselves in a mirror, which is bananas because that's something we thought like only elephants and chimps and dolphins can do, and most people. And of course, the most mega of the megafauna, the blue whale, literally the largest animal on Earth ever, including dinosaurs. So the record one is 109 feet, but they probably got bigger. It's just hard to confirm that since we've been whaling a lot longer than we've been sciencing. Fun fact, these mamma jammas can communicate across the entire ocean, whole ocean basins. Also, their tongues are the size of elephants, and you could swim through its aorta, which is like kind of weird and terrifying on multiple levels to me. So I could go on for like literally hours, but you get the idea. All these cool critters are examples of what we call charismatic megafauna, which is your science word of the day. This definition, courtesy of Wikipedia, what every serious scientist uses but doesn't admit to. Any large animal species with a symbolic value or widespread popular appeal, often used by activists to gain public support for environmental goals. Thank you, Wikipedia. So charismatic megafauna tend to be large, far roaming. They're often top predators or keystone species. A lot of them are what we call umbrella species, because if you protect them, you need to protect big areas of habitat and critical ecosystem functions. And so in doing so, you protect that habitat for everything underneath them. So all the other species that make up that ecological community. So it's not really a scientific category. It's more of a conservation action term. And on land, you have tigers and panda bears and elephants, oh my, but they all share similar characteristics. They're big, they're beautiful, they're sexy, they're just all around photogenic AF, the influencers of the ocean realm, if you will. And then there's this. So it's easy to think that all the species that exist in the world are the results of millions of years of evolution, just the unforgiving forces of natural selection, ruthlessly choosing only the most useful, well-adapted traits, that the animals we see are just these finely tuned machines perfectly matched to their environment. But every now and then, you see a creature that like probably just shouldn't exist, and you can't help but think, go home, evolution, you were drunk. So I present to you Exhibit A, the Mola, also known as the ocean sunfish. In other languages, they're also called moonfish, headfish, the swimming head, and in Taiwanese, its name apparently translates to the fish that looks like a toppled car, which I find just so delightful. So what are these derpy trunks just floating around out there? Well, let's talk taxonomy. So humans love to create order out of chaos. We just love organizing things and lumping them into categories. And when we're talking about animals, we refer to this organization as taxonomy, the science of how we name and classify critters. It used to be based on what they look like, but that isn't the best way since nature is tricksy like a hobbit and is full of confusing shenanigans. So nowadays we use genetics to trace the evolutionary lineage of things. Molas are in the kingdom Animalia with all the other animals, the phylum Chordata with everything with a spine, the class Osteichthyes, which is all the bony fish like your salmon and your rockfish, and the order Tetraodontiformes, which includes this lovable bunch of weirdos pictured here, like the pufferfish, filefish, triggerfish, etc. So molids are actually considered highly derived or advanced from a taxonomic standpoint because they're actually one of the newer additions to the animal kingdom. So they've got some new features like the iPhone XYZ or whatever we're at now. So they evolved more recently than other fish species that we see day to day. And it gets its name from an old Swedish dude named Carl Linnaeus, considered the father of taxonomy. So he's like the OG OCD critter science nerd. And he thought they looked like a millstone, which is the archaic device pictured here. Mola is Latin for millstone. And this is probably how he saw molas, just big old gray slabs of meat just lying about on shore or on the deck of a boat dead, since snorkeling had not quite taken off yet in the early 1700s. So we know of 5 living species of mola today. So you have the common sunfish, the mola mola, the giant or bumphead sunfish. We have the sharp tail, which is more tropical and has this little pointy tail nubbin. And then the slender mola is this little nugget down here. It tends to be a little more colorful and elusive, just like 3.5 feet long. So just a little guy. And the most recent addition to the molid family is the newly discovered hoodwinker mola. And it got this not so sciencey sounding name because it's been hiding in plain sight for over a century. So it basically hoodwinked all those fish nerds out there. And it was only officially discovered a few years ago because we just assumed it was a common mola until we kind of dug into the genetics of it. And I don't know about y'all, but I just think it's so exciting that a new species of giant lovable weirdo in the world, like it's just so exciting that there's probably more out there just derping about, waiting to be discovered and hopefully named something appropriately absurd. Because like I said, the ocean is vast and mysterious. So where do molas at? Well, we see them throughout the tropical and temperate oceans of the world. So they'll stray into colder waters, but they don't seem to enjoy the really cold waters so that much, which is just one of the many ways that I feel really connected to these fish on a deep level. I love this Know Your Mola graphic because the molas are so happy and smiley. But you can see in these green areas pictured here that their ranges are a little different depending on which mola you're looking at. So the common mola tends to be a little farther north. The bumphead is just all over, bumpheading about. And originally we thought the hoodwinker hung out mostly in the south, since that's where we first found them and saw them. But now that we know what to look for, we're seeing them turn up further and further north. In fact, just over a year ago, we found them for the first time off of the US's Pacific coast, and there's ongoing research to collect more sighting data. Currently, we don't have any documented off of Washington's coasts, which I take issue with, but we've seen them north and south of us, so we know they're out there. So if you see a sunfish, say something. For real, there are scientists that want you to holler at them if you find a sunfish. This map that is pictured here on the left is actually part of a global ocean sunfish sighting database that you can contribute to and report sightings to and become a mola mad scientist yourself. All right, so what are molas made of? Well, a whole bunch of meat, like 5,000 pounds of it. So that's like a rhino or a Chevy Silverado. And they probably get bigger, especially the ladies, which tend to be a little huskier than males. Another reason I feel these are kindred spirits, which makes them the heaviest bony fish in the world. I did mention the whale shark, which is bigger and heavier, but it's a shark. So it has a cartilage skeleton, so it doesn't count. All that meat is covered in thick, tough skin, which can be up to 6 inches thick in some places. And I've heard it compares to 36 grit sandpaper covered in a thick slime. And if that doesn't make you just want to reach out and pet one, I don't know if we can be friends. It's likely that their size and thick skin are their primary defense, since there's just not many things out there that can take a bite out of this big old chunk. Except maybe a megalodon, which is what you get if like 4 or 5 fully grown great white sharks like Voltron themselves together into one big nightmare shark. Luckily, megalodons are extinct, or so we think, but part of me hopes that they're still out there. Anyway, so Mola Award number 1 goes to them for being the heaviest bony fish in the world. Congratulations, big old chunks. So to hold up all of that meat and thick skin, they have bones, right? Because they're bony fish, but they've actually kind of backtracked a bit, evolutionarily speaking, and re-evolved a lot of cartilage. Like I mentioned, they're one of the newest species of fish swimming around out there, so they're considered highly derived, aka super advanced, obviously. It's possible that they have more cartilage because they don't have a swim bladder, which is the inflatable organ that many fish use to control their buoyancy. Cartilage is lighter and more flexible than bone, so it's easier to get away without having a floaty sac inside you. We recently discovered that the babies actually do have a swim bladder that I guess they just lose at some point. I'm guessing it's because adults make repeated deep dives when they feed, and you don't want an air-filled sac causing pressure change problems every time you head down for a snack. So yeah, molas were like, yeah, we don't need all these bones, and also we'll pass on a tail, which seems an odd choice since the vast majority of fishes have a caudal fin or tail fin that they use to propel themselves around quite effectively, I would argue. Have you ever caught a fish with your bare hands? Probably not one with a tail. But these derps were like, how about instead of a tail, we grow this useless clavis, which is what you call their little pseudo tail nubbin that doesn't really seem to have any use whatsoever. So they've opted out of a perfectly good tail, and instead they move by flapping their dorsal and anal fins around, sort of like a bird flapping its wings, but way more awkward. Again, it's like they know me. In addition to ditching their tail, or because of it, they have fewer vertebrae than any other fish. They only have 16, whereas like we have like 33, I think, by comparison. And all their vertebrae are located within their brain case. So yeah, they are a swimming head, which is weird. They also have a bunch of other weird modifications, kind of like that first car you owned and didn't realize that one day you'd need to resell it. They have reduced sensory systems, so tiny ear bones, tiny little nostrils, kind of a janky lateral line that's not as good as most fish's lateral lines, which is the sensory organ that fish have along the side of their bodies that allow them to be really good at being fish, like detect changes in water and pressure that allow them to school and detect predators coming after them and things. So they're just like, we don't need that either. They've got weird branched scales and supersized kidneys, which is fun. And even their gills are weird with novel structures and unknown anatomical features. And they have really big hearts, which I love, probably to push blood through their big weird gills. So the second Mola Award is for having the fewest vertebrae and a bunch of other weird structures we've never seen before, but nobody really cares about unless you're like a super fish nerd. Whoop. Well, oh yeah, and their teeth are fused into a beak-like structure that prevents them from closing their mouths, giving them, and this is one of my favorite quotes I found on the internet, a meme-worthy look of confused alarm. Liz, you might ask, can they eat with that ineffectual-looking, non-bitey beaking thing? And of course, I know you don't believe me. I didn't believe it at first myself. So I found video proof that they are, in fact, capable of getting foodstuffs into their face holes, which they do by sucking in water with their food, then spitting the water back out. So not the best table manners, which of course I can relate to. So I'm gonna hopefully show you guys this little video. It's in German, so I'm not gonna play the audio, but you can see this little derp face. He can't close his mouth. He's coming at it, he's coming at it. Behold, the master predator unforgivingly slurping its prey with no remorse. So hopefully you caught that little slurping of a jellyfish structure. So, all right, so these guys are far roaming. They're structurally really weird. They come from a weird family, so it's no surprise that their lives are equally odd. So these guys start their life out as a tiny little planktonic pea covered in spikes. And I mean tiny, like less than a millimeter. And then from what we can tell, they grow pretty quickly into this husky blimp lump pictured here. We don't know exactly how quickly, but one in Monterey Bay Aquarium grew 800 pounds in a little over a year. It apparently got too big for his tank and had to be airlifted out via helicopter, which I would literally give my firstborn to go back in time with some popcorn and a lawn chair and just watch that happen, because it just sounds like the best time. At some point between those stages, there are these palm-sized little pancakes pictured here. We don't really see these very often. The one pictured here is actually a slender mola. So these are actually 3 different species of mola because I'm all about accuracy, but you get the point. And the fact that we don't see these sort of teenager little pancake guys is another indication that they probably grow really fast, which makes sense because in the ocean, it behooves you to grow big as fast as you can, because the bigger you are, the fewer things can fit you in their mouths. So the juveniles tend to school for safety, but once they get big enough to be less bite-sized and not so universally delicious, they seem to be pretty solitary, which has been true for me as well. I used to be so social, and now I'm just an old curmudgeon giving lectures in my PJs through the internet. We don't know how long they live, probably at least 15 to 20 years, but it could be over 100. We know of one that's been in captivity for at least 10 years, so definitely at least a decade. But I like to think of them as timeless. And now I'm going to show you another video of a whole school of tween molas, along with what I would describe as exquisite commentary.
Oh my God. Holy guacamole. Look at these guys. Holy guacamole.
Holy guacamole is right. Look at these guys. They are so cute. So, oh yeah, and so that brings us to our third mola word, is that they have the largest growth of any vertebrate. And just to emphasize how completely ridiculous that growth is, these little peas turn into this massive hunk of meat, and that requires increasing their size 60 million times. So apparently that's the equivalent of a human baby becoming the size of 6 Titanics, like the big boat. And I did want to give you an idea of how truly chonky they are by showing you this kind of shaky video that shows you, this is just a massive, what to me looks like a bump head mola covered in parasites, and this little diver to the side, just looking so small, this adult human next to this gigantic creature. So just so massive and so awkward, and I love them. All right. Oh, nope, that's not what I want. Stop. All right. Now, no, oh, that's what's happening. That's a video link. Okay, we're back on track. All right, and with this great size comes great fecundity, and that is your second or 14th, I don't know, science word of the day. It basically refers to the number of eggs a female produces. And that brings us to our 4th Mola award, most fecund. So exciting. How fecund, you might ask? Well, one female was found to have 300 million eggs in her. By comparison, your average salmon lays around 5,000-ish eggs, and then it dies. These chonky babes can crank out hundreds of millions of eggs at a time. Like many fish, they have external fertilization and reproduce by what's called broadcast spawning. So males and females, that mommies and daddies that love each other, eject their gametes, eggs and sperm, out into the water column in a joyous celebration of life, where they mix together so the eggs are fertilized and then drift around free on the ocean currents. We actually don't find their eggs very often, probably because it's like tiny, adorable round needles in the endless haystack of the vast and empty ocean. And we have what I consider to be just a really disappointing understanding of their sex lives. So in summary, so far, we know where the molas are, what they're made of. We have an unacceptably vague idea about what their sex life is like. But what do they do? What's a day in the life of a mola like? And this is a question I ask myself probably more often than would be recommended by a doctor. But they do a lot. They spend a lot of time eating all sorts of stuff, a lot of gooey stuff, especially. So we find them, we find all kinds of things in their bellies, like squid and sponges, sea stars, eelgrass, little crustaceans, even small fish. And we can tell from these gut content analyses that they're feeding at the surface, in the water column, and at the bottom. So they're not picky eaters. Hashtag molas are my soul critter. We also know that their diet tends to shift from little crustaceans and crunchy snacks to gelatinous zooplankton like ctenophore salps and jellies as they get older. And as you might guess, there's not a lot of nutrients in a jellyfish. So I'm guessing they're voracious predators, just out there slurping up jellies left and right. And with climate change, we're seeing increasing numbers of jellyfish swarms, which are called a smack, just fun. In some places, the jellyfish are actually replacing more valuable species. So I like to think of molas as our first line of defense against the encroaching jelly hordes of the future. Molas will save us all. You heard it here first. We also know from tagging studies that they spend a lot of time diving, so they can get down to at least 3,000 feet or more, but they seem to enjoy hanging out just below the thermocline, which is where warm surface water meets the cold water of the deep. And that's where a lot of planktonic or drifting life forms get concentrated, usually around 200 to 600 feet deep. So the molas like to hang out there since that's where all the snacks are. Sort of like chilling on the sidewalk in front of your local corner store. It's where the cool kids are, and it's where you go to get treats. And you wouldn't know it for looking at them, but these blimpy bumpkins can actually launch their meaty bodies like 10 feet in the air. There are anecdotes of them jumping into boats, which makes me want to move onto a boat. And since I know it's hard, nay, impossible to imagine such a beast being able to reach the necessary velocity to break the surface, I found a couple of videos of them breaching above and below. So here is a little tiny baby.
Baby sunfish, breach.
You ever seen a sunfish breach? Now you have. And then here's one from below, a more adult. It gets a little hard to see because the visibility here isn't great. But that's how they move with their little awkward flappy. Getting up speed. Getting up speed. Send it. And then he lands. So there you go. Proof. The internet doesn't lie. That's not true. The internet lies all the time, but not about molas jumping. And why do they jump? So I like to think it's a spontaneous manifestation of their own internalized sense of beauty and self-love. But scientists say that it's to remove parasites, which they have a lot of. Is this something I also share with molas? Maybe, a lady never tells. Moving on. Over 50 species of parasites have been found on these filthy beauties. And since they don't have hands, they need help getting them off. So one way is by jumping and smacking down hard on the water like a sideways belly flop. But they also team up with fellow beasts like fish and birds and allow their tiny friends to rip all the worms and parasitic copepods and such from their flesh, because that's what friends are for. So the image pictured here is a mola at a feeding station on a reef, and these little Moorish idol fish are enjoying a nice buffet, just having a great day. And sometimes they even apparently let us naked apes lend a hand. So here are some more YouTube videos of other people living my dream. So this first one is a mola just aggressively coming at a guy, a diver. And it's like, come on, man. Look at this. I'm so itchy. Help a fish out. I have these tiny fins. I can't touch my face. Please, spritz me. That's what he's saying. Look at that face. How can you not love that face? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Too much. And then we also have this video, and this is a little bit longer, and he narrates it, but it's pretty good. So it's educational. We're going to send it.
Island, and I came to see blue and mako sharks with pelagic expeditions, but we had a little surprise of a mola showing up, and it was hanging out at the surface, sunning itself, and the captain let us know that sometimes while they sun themselves, they let the birds come down and pick parasites off of them. So maybe we would have a chance to hang out with it and even pick some parasites off of it ourselves. Eric's drone kept sight of it for us as we swam over to it, and sure enough, we got to act as human cleaning stations today and pick some copepods off of the skin of this guy.
How cool is that?
Rotate, let's see, you got, oh yeah, you got pretty covered on the back.
There you go. I hope that we all can serve as cleaning stations one day. Keep the dream alive. So like me, molas also love the company of birds and are often found basking at the surface, but it's not just to let the birds munch off all their itchy parasites. It's also because sunfish love the sun. #SoulCritter. They spend a good bit of time basking, and we're pretty sure it's because they need to warm up after all those dives below the thermocline. So it's called thermal recharging, which is something I do every winter when I visit my family in Florida. We're pretty sure of this because of several tagging studies that show that the longer they stay at depth, the longer they'll loiter at the surface, sort of like us Washingtonians emerging from the depths of a gray winter and spending as much time as we can burning ourselves in the early spring sunshine. We also know that some sunfish migrate to warmer latitudes in the winter, and the ones that do spend less time basking than those homebodies that stay up in those colder, higher latitudes. This behavior actually might help explain why they look the way they do. Well, not their meme-worthy face, but their humongous pancakery, because being big helps you maintain thermal momentum. So you lose heat more slowly the bigger you are, and being a big pancake lets you warm up more quickly when you laze around on the surface like a meaty solar panel. So like I said, they're the epitome of evolution. Despite being supremely adapted to their environment, life as a mola is not without its hazards. So I found this quote from a sailor that apparently crashed into molas thrice in 1 year, which is probably just as bad for the boat as it was for the mola, because remember, it's like crashing your boat into a Silverado. And maybe he's just a bad pilot. I'm just saying, at some point you gotta wonder if maybe it's you, if you're the one crashing into all these molas. So how are molas doing these days? What kind of threats do they face? So they aren't winning any races. I couldn't find a good estimate on their top speed, but it might be like 2 or 5 miles an hour. It's not that fast. So apparently not fast enough to get out of the way of sailboats. And apparently they also can get sucked up into ships with big propellers. I couldn't find a good free picture of one that's been hit by a boat, but this is what it would look like afterwards, being predated. So the ocean is just chock full of things that just really love to eat each other. And while few things can take on a full-grown mola, so maybe orcas or some big sharks, it's really the juveniles that are susceptible to predation. So sea lions, for example, have been seen biting off their fins, which basically disables them, and then batting them around and eventually letting them sink to the floor to die slowly. So my conclusion is that sea lions are jerks, and you can't convince me otherwise. Apparently they do get harassed. Some, not all, but some people suck when it comes to respecting wildlife. So this particular individual decided to ride this mola, which, although that is my one true life goal, I'd like to think I'd restrain myself if given the opportunity. I can't promise that. I probably wouldn't. I will say that you do ride a mola at your own risk. Remember, these fish are covered in parasites, grotesquely so. And apparently this individual human had a bunch of parasitic copepods on his nether bits after this incident. So just don't be this guy unless you want parasitic copepods on your junk. By far the biggest threat to them, however, are commercial fisheries. Molas will get hooked on long lines and get caught in nets to a pretty alarming extent. Just a few of the numbers I found were kind of sobering. So in South Africa, they apparently catch 340,000 a year as bycatch. Here on our own coast, molas apparently make up 30% of what the California swordfish fishery catches, which means they catch more molas than they do swordfish. PSA, just don't eat a lot of swordfish. It's not good for the swordfish. And there is a market for them, mostly in Asia, where people eat them on purpose. And of course, no Surfrider presentation is complete without the mention of the universal threat of plastic pollution to all life on Earth. So molas eat what's floating around in the sea, and as we all know, more and more of what's floating around is plastic. So if we don't turn off the tap of plastic and stop overfishing, then at some point in the near future, there will be more plastic than fish out there. One study looking at this found microplastics in 80% of the molas that they sampled, which is why things like our bag ban and our recent passage of our plastic and recycling bill have impacts beyond our own beaches and waterways. So join Surfrider today. So the answer to the question of how molas are doing these days is we don't really know. The IUCN, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which is sort of the body that lists species as endangered and threatened and vulnerable, etc. They list the common mola as vulnerable and decreasing, mostly due to being killed as bycatch in fisheries around the world. The other 4 species we lack sufficient data to say. So, which is why the community science reporting that I mentioned earlier through Mer Society and OceanSunfishResearch.org are so important, because these amazing goofballs could need our help and we wouldn't even know. And why wouldn't we help them? They are objectively one of the most endearing, if not sexy, kinds of megafauna in the sea. And early research shows that they love snacks and smooches. That's a lie. We don't we have not empirically demonstrated that they love snacks and smooches, but we haven't proven that they don't either because we know so little about them. So a quick review of the Mola wards. They are the heaviest bony fish, excluding sharks and rays, with the fewest vertebra, but the most eggs, and they grow real good, better than anything else with a spine. So in summary, the Mola, as unsexy as it may be, still deserves its place among the charismatic megafauna of the sea. I found this image of a series of stamps, and it sparked so much joy in my cold dead heart because you have these super charismatic species. You have your whale shark, the oceanic white tip, a manta ray, and these sleek, stripy billfish. And they're hidden in plain sight, this lumpy derp just right in the middle with all the other charismatic megafauna, where, and I hope you now agree, it deserves to be. But I don't want to be a speciesist, and so I want to spend a little time giving some love to similarly under-recognized, but no less deserving, uncharismatic megafauna. So we've spent time talking about how molas are the heaviest bony fish, so I wanted to give some love to the longest bony fish, the oarfish. So this is a bizarre denizen of the deep that we only get very rare glimpses of. The longest one that we've officially recorded was 26 feet, but there are unconfirmed reports of fish that were 36 and 56 feet long. And since most of the pictures you see of these lovely slender sea peacocks are of them washed up dead on a beach somewhere. And I hunted down some footage of a guy diving with one at night, and it's just so shiny and so unexpectedly vertical. And I really feel a connection with this diver because he's nerding out real hard and is like, whoa, look at this thing. This is amazing. I gotta touch it. Oh my God, I touched it. So we're gonna watch this guy hang out with an oarfish, and I hope it delights you as it delighted me. Thanks, Animal Planet.
This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. More people have seen the Earth from space. See one of these this time. Such an outlandish looking thing. I won't even touch it. I actually touched it. Oh.
I mean, I would touch it too. I'm not gonna lie. That's totally what I would do in that situation. And you all should. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't touch things in the ocean unless they consent. But it seemed cool with it. Anyway, and because 2020 wasn't enough and we all need more nightmare fodder in our lives, I present to you the Bathynomus, the giant deep sea isopod. So these are essentially giant carnivorous pill bugs that live in the deep dark abyss. So they can get over 2.5 feet long and have not one, not two, but 4 sets of jaws. They live in a constant state of semi-hibernation because like life is slow and boring down there. And apparently they have the largest eggs of any invertebrate because it's not nightmarish enough to have a giant pill bug that lives in the darkest corners of the earth and eats meat. We needed to have horrific sized spawn as well. We used to think they were mostly scavengers, but apparently they are not just scavengers and they can kill sharks. And I hear you. No, Liz, that just can't be. You're wrong. But it can because the ocean is rad and terrifying. So here you go, courtesy of the internet, a giant isopod. It's a quick video and it's hard to see, but there's 2 sharks swimming around and then one of them gets got. So I don't know if you can tell that that is a giant pill bug of death devouring a live shark. So isn't that great? Don't you love it? I love it. Thanks, ocean. A little closer to home in the Pacific Northwest, we have the lion's mane jellyfish, which you can find, YouTube videos going rogue, which you can find in our own Puget Sound, although it's usually not this big. You'll see this image here on the internet with a tiny diver Photoshop next to it because it's a total deep sea fake. Get it? Sorry, not sorry. They do get over 6 feet in diameter and they have tentacles over 120 feet long, which is longer than our blue whale. So our little lion's mane jellyfish is actually the largest jelly in the world. It will sting you. I don't believe it's usually fatal unless you're just super unlucky and have a bad reaction or somehow manage to expertly wind all 120 feet of tentacle around your body like a sad, sad marionette. And I'm sure you've all heard of the giant squid, which is pictured on the bottom here, which gets all the love. And I believe it's the longest. But since we're here to celebrate the Mola's huskiness, we shall likewise celebrate this champion of cephalopods, weighing in at over 1,000 pounds, the colossal squid. So it is the largest invertebrate in the world, and it has the largest eyes of any creature on Earth. It hangs out in the southern colder oceans, so we don't run into it as often as the giant squid, which we also don't run into very often. And they battle sperm whales. And I really hope I live to see the day when we stick a GoPro on a sperm whale's face and watch said battle unfold. I love that so much. Oh, did you want a squid nightmare to add to your Bathynomus dreams? Well, I live to serve. And researchers built this underwater platform with lights to lure big squids in so we could get some better pics of them. I presume for the gram, maybe TikTok, not sure. And I'm not going to lie, on a scale of like 1 to 10 heebie-jeebies, I'm going to give this video like a 6, maybe a 7 if I'm watching it alone at night or while swimming. So this is like a little lure device. And you're like, oh, what is that? A tentacle? A little tiny tentacle? No. It's Cthulhu coming from the deep. So this is what your last moments would look like if you were being attacked by a giant squid. And then he's like, I can't eat this, I'm out. So just so spooky. Black and white spookiness doesn't help. Far less mobile or scary, but arguably more beautiful, we have Tridacna gigas, the giant clam, and it can get over 6 feet long and weigh over 500 pounds. And we think they probably live well over 100 years if some jerk doesn't kill them for their shell. These guys have symbiotic algae similar to how corals do that give them these really beautiful trippy colors of like purple and blue and pink and green. And they're just wonderful. I love them. They're like a big stone couch that just hangs out and filters water and is covered in magic eye posters from the early 90s. And then next we have the gyrant pyrosome, which looks like a big old rice noodle, but is actually a pelagic tunicate, which is sort of a primitive filter feeding organism. And so these big old noodles can get over 60 feet long. And of course, because the ocean is red, they glow in the dark blue, I think, which is so cool. Although I'm not gonna lie, if I stumbled on one of these, I might freak out if I didn't know what it was, because it looks like maybe an egg sac of some really, really, really big, weird, scary thing with probably lots of mouth parts. Or maybe I'd just choose to ride it like this individual. Again, just don't be that guy or gal. It could be a woman. Let's be real. It's probably a dude, but just don't ride it. And finally, I wanted to end with the sponge. Since sponges, they deserve our love for so many reasons. For one, they've just been around for forever. They're the oldest, most primitive animal on Earth. They've been around for like 500 million years. And they're just weird, man. They don't have specialized tissues. So apparently you could just blend one up and then all those cells will just bloop, turn themselves back into a sponge somehow. So they're basically made of like stem cells, and they can live well over 2,000 years apparently. And their skeletons are made of glass, which is just neat, but like don't eat them. They also filter the ever-loving bejesus out of the water. I read one estimate that the sponges in the Caribbean can filter all of the water in the Caribbean in one day, just like filtering the crap out of the water. The world's largest sponge used to be the Caribbean giant barrel sponge, but researchers recently discovered a newer, bigger sponge in Hawaii's Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, pictured here on the bottom, all weird and lumpy and ghost-like. And it is 12 feet long and 7 feet high. So apparently it's taken the title away from my beloved barrel sponge for now, but I'm still rooting for the barrels because I like to picture myself relaxing in one after a long day. But I wouldn't, because it's not cool. For the record, please don't sit on or in animals in the ocean. Just don't. It's not good for them, and there's a very good chance it won't be good for you either. And because I love videos of science nerds just freaking out about what they find in the sea, here's a video of them stumbling upon the world's largest sponge.
Oh my goodness, where did this guy come from?
Wow.
Holy cow.
Wow.
That is unbelievable.
Oh my geez.
That's amazing.
So we sampled this a couple days ago, and I'm trying to figure out what it is right now. And I don't know, just from the spicules, but holy guacamole here. Look at this thing.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Just holy guacamole. He said it wrong, but I'll forgive him for that. So, all right. So, we made it. So back to molas. If, like me, you're now obsessed with these deep diving derps, there's a few resources I can recommend. OceanSunfish.org supports the ocean sunfish research efforts. You can report sightings, like I mentioned, because knowing is half the battle. You can adopt a sunfish, so donations go to supporting sunfish research. And apparently, if you have like tens of thousands of dollars to drop, they'll like take you out on a research vessel. So, mom and dad, if you're out there listening, that's what I want for Christmas. I recently crashed the virtual Ocean Sunfish Symposium, which is all gloriously available on YouTube. So it's just full of wonderful Mola obsessed nerds from all over the world. So if you want to spend like 8+ hours nerding out on all things molas, that is freely available on the interwebs. I also randomly stumbled on the Mola fan club, which seems to be a hodgepodge group of fellow Moladites, Molamaniacs, Molologists. I don't know what to call my people. I'm open to suggestions. But this seems to be the place to go to show off your new Mola tattoo, which, mark my words, I will share when, not if, but when it happens. Also, if you have, this is just my own personal thing, if you have any really good pictures of molas, please upload them to like Unsplash or Flickr or some free photo library, because there are, like, all the images I showed you at the beginning were free and available on like Unsplash or something, of all the cool, well-known, well-loved, charismatic megafauna. And I had a heck of a time tracking down free pictures of molas that weren't copyrighted, because, you know, it's just another frustrating example of species discrimination. So take pictures of molas, upload them to the research database, and then maybe send them my way, and I'll put them freely on the internet. So this concludes my long and rambling sunfish love fest. I hope you leave with a newfound appreciation for these endearingly awkward, flappy sea pancakes, and that you are able to take some life lessons with you. Don't forget to live life like a mola. Dive deep, explore your world, seek out the sun, especially here in Washington. Roam far and wide. Just go with the flow, man. Never stop growing, and don't be afraid to be yourself, even if you have a perpetual meme-worthy look of confused alarm, or you feel like your body is put together wrong. You are supremely adapted to this universe, and I appreciate you. And with that, I'd like to end by putting on a video. It's basically my favorite video of all time, and is my life's quest, which is hand-feeding snacks to the chonkiest of awkward and lovable sea beasts. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions as you watch this guy dangle a delicious snack towards this looming derpy chunk. Look at that face. He's like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get that snack. And then you can watch him, you can watch the feeding behavior of him slurping it with his perpetually open, meme-worthy face. Just look at that. How satisfying does that look? So satisfying. All right, Tina.
Oh, Liz. A delight as always. You've got Jason, Molly, and Lacey just blowing up the feed with lots and lots of love and hilarity. We are big fans. So we do have some great questions coming in, and for those of you watching now, now's a great time to add some more to the docket, and I will feed those Liz's way. You can slurp them up like a mola might. I don't know. Our first and truly a most excellent question comes from Rachel. She needs to know, if you were gonna hug a mola, how are you gonna do it? From the front, from the side? What is the proper way to give a mola a little snuggle?
I love this question, and I'm going to spend a lot more of my time really contemplating it on a deeper level, but I guess it would depend on the size of the mola. So if we're talking about like a tween juvenile mola that I can heft and pick up, I'm just going to grab it and just shake it Elmira style and just hug it as close to my body as I can. Probably trying to keep his eyes like protected, you know, so he or she, if the mole is a she, feels safe and comforted and not oppressed. For a large giant derp, I would probably go with the 4-limbed full body hug, probably from the top, just because it just feels a little less awkward than like clinging to it from the bottom. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go like lengthwise, hug it from the top, and then basically kind of riding it like that guy that I was like, don't be that guy, but I'm that guy.
Love it. Love it.
But like if you use the hands and it's a hug, it's not harassment.
Yeah, you just get parasites in your armpits.
It's worth it. Totally worth it.
Totally worth it. This is a question I don't think is answerable, but how is Liz so awesome? Yeah, the world needs to know.
I have to give credit to my mom and my dad who, just let me be weird. Like I probably would have sent me to therapy and been like, this child, there's something wrong with her. Can you fix her? And they just like let me be a feral swamp critter running around in the St. John's River. And we're like, maybe she'll grow out of it. So, them having faith and not trying to fix what I would have considered something that needed fixing. So thanks, Mom and Dad.
Cheers to the parents. Woo, woo. Speaking of your parents, it sounds like they already have your Christmas gift figured out. So you'll have to ask again for the Mola cruise.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Molly is wondering, where can I go locally to see a Mola?
The ocean. I don't know. Like I'm still figuring that out. I use the database and I sort of watch it. So my best recommendation would be to like a whale watching vessel, because they like to be in deeper water, right? So they're probably not going to be in shallow water because they like to feed at like 200 or 600 feet. So they're usually not in shallow water unless they're little wee babes hiding from predators or they're sick. So I would say either a whale watching vessel is not a bad one, or fishing vessels. So yeah, hanging out with fishermen, anybody with a boat that's willing to take it several miles offshore. I'll be honest, like when I used to go fishing all the time in the Keys with my friends, and I'd be like, I'll be the one that looks for birds and to find some like birds where there might be like tuna or something. And like really the whole time I was looking for molas. And I always had like a mask and snorkel ready within arm's reach, and I was prepared to leap off the boat at any moment to swim with a mola, and it never happened.
The mola motives, or ulterior mola motives. I don't know.
You're so good. You're my partner.
And if we were to see a mola, Curtis could use a reminder of where do we report those sightings?
Oh, a great one. So OceanSunfishResearch.org is where you would go. And then there's also, let me back up on my thing. It's there's an email. So let me pull it up. The MERS Society is kind of, I think, like a separate research group that's like collaborating to specifically track the hoodwinker mola. Mm-hmm. And so MERSsociety.org /Mola is their work. And then there's OceanSunfishResearch@gmail.com. So
were you saying, I feel like the mola background you have going on, didn't somebody, they like saw the picture promoting this talk and they're like, actually, what is the sunfish behind you?
It was a presentation for the South Sound chapter, and whatever image we had for like that advertisement, the MERS Society people reached out to us and they're like, where did you get that picture? We think it's a hoodwinker. And I'm like, I have no idea, the internet. Sorry. So that was great though, because they're on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Jason's curious. So just what would happen if you booped a mola on the snoot?
They, you'd probably come back with more than you asked for, but I think they'd be okay with it if you were gentle, and maybe gave them a little scritch while you were there. But it's a great question.
That's great. Yes, and Rachel, definitely, she's sharing some appreciation that you're here to answer the important questions. For that,
I live to serve, and it's why I went to grad school, was to answer those very questions.
Ooh, we have Stephanie Moore tuning in here, saying they watched with the whole family, and the eldest child begrudgingly now admits molas are kind of interesting. So you're changing the hearts and minds of many, I can only imagine.
That sparks a lot of joy. Thank you for sharing.
All right, another important question that Lacey would like to know. Would you lady Lady and the Tramp, a Mola with a squid.
Oh, 100%, like 1,000%. Like that would be my dream.
That's the easy one.
And if our lips touch, like that's fine. I'm okay.
That's fine. Just get a little extra slurp in, maybe. Woo!
I would linger like just a little awkwardly too long, but
yeah. Well, I guess I'm trying to think if I have any questions of my own while we let some more folks tune in with some wonders. But it looks like, as far as I can tell, we've gone through the list of questions. Really, I'm excited for you to go back through the comments because there is so much love just pouring out for you here. It's amazing. So while you folks stew on maybe a couple more questions, I just have a couple of Harbor Wild Watch announcements to go through. And mostly it pertains to upcoming events. We have a beautiful low tide coming up where we're going to be doing lots of community science out on the beach. And so we'll be broadcasting those beach walks live to you on the Facebook, and of course putting that on our YouTube channel later. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube page, please do that. That's my little shout out there. We're also on TikTok, which apparently Liz, Rachel will take her phone and get the take the stream onto TikTok. And I think we said something that set off their community guidelines. So for any of you who are tuning in on TikTok, sorry we got booted there. I don't think they can handle the lumpy derp excellence that was this presentation.
Might have been showing all the YouTube videos. I don't know. Sometimes those platforms don't.
Oh yeah, sometimes platforms like that. And then we also have our monthly Science from the Scansy House things happening. We'll be doing that on June 3rd is our next one coming up. There's also World Ocean Day. And so we will be celebrating that by collaborating with the Foss Waterway and Seaport. We're going to get a tour of their whale skeleton. So thinking of the big, beautiful, and bizarre, that should be a fun time, as well as a little opportunity for a rockfish survey later that evening. And then a nice Surfrider collaboration. There's the Tacoma Shoreline Survey and Beach Cleanup happening on June 5th. Surfrider, myself included, will be posting up at Jack Hyde Park to collect all the trash you find on any shoreline in Tacoma to kind of get an idea of all that unfortunate plastic pollution that Liz mentioned in this presentation. So that is definitely something to put on your calendar, including a lantern paddle, which I think will just be magical and fun. That's happening on June 4th. So yeah, World Ocean Day, lots to celebrate there. And it looks like we do have a couple more questions coming in, which is perfect. Lucinda, in the bio, you mentioned you had some sea shanties. That's you. Do you have any sea shanties you'd like to share? That's
no.
off the top of your head. Yeah, a different presentation for another time, perhaps.
You know, guys, I just don't think the audio comes through on Zoom well, so that's going to be my cop out. But I do have on my to-do list to write a Mola song. So perhaps that will be a release to TikTok or whatever the kids are into these days. I hear that's where the shanties go on TikTok. But
yeah, I was impressed with your maybe like Dr. Seuss parody regarding plastic pollution.
I should just write some chords to that.
Yeah. So if anyone can do it, Liz, you're the one. And then Lacey tuning in again, letting us know that Tom wants to know what the greatest challenge to the Mola is.
You know, that is a great question. I'm gonna just
for their survival. I guess there's a
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because we know so little about them. Like we only know that one of them is vulnerable and decreasing. The other, we have no idea what the other 4 species are doing. Some of them could be doing really, really well. Because like I said, like climate change is causing an increase in jellyfish. So they might have abundant prey in some locations. Probably, you know, fisheries is the biggest threat. Just hundreds of thousands of them are killed as bycatch every year in various fisheries all over the world. And so that is obviously probably not sustainable, and that's going to have the biggest impact to them. I don't know if there's anything that's been specifically studied in terms of like how climate change is affecting them directly, because that's just really hard to identify and test empirically in the ocean. But yeah, my guess, being not a Mola scientist, just a wannabe, mad Mola obsessed person, is that it's going to be fisheries.
Also, I think a pretty good guess there.
And not getting enough love. So just send them love.
So to Howard's question, what do they taste like? Howard, we don't want to taste the Mola Mola. We want to hug the Mola Mola.
That's a good question. They are in the same family as like pufferfish and things. And I actually read a few things that like they're toxic to eat, but I could not confirm it. And I don't think that's actually true. That I think that's just sort of an assumption because several other species in that same order are also toxic. So they're probably, I don't know, they don't look good. But I'm also a believer that like if you know how to cook anything, you can make it good, except for possum. Possum's disgusting. Don't ever eat a possum. Yeah, I don't know. There's enough barbecue sauce in the world, so
yeah.
maybe.
Well, then you were talking about like the grit Sam, whatever grit Sam, like.
Sounds like you got to like work to get it. So is it even
serious tenderizing that must occur for this magic to happen,
right?
And I think we'll round it off with Jason's excellent question here at the end. If they ever do manage to fly, will the Mola Mola seek revenge for all those boat strikings and plastic junk?
I hope so. I'm gonna vote out. I'm gonna fight on the side of the molas if that.
I'm like, even if they don't need to fly, like, can they just take over revengefully anyway? I don't know.
Just like aggressively, gently bumping you with their like stupid kisses and their funny mouths.
Excuse me, change your ways, please. Well,
thank you all for joining me in my obsession tonight. I hope it was informative and fun.
Absolutely. The Harbor Wild Watch motto is learn, have fun. And I have no doubt in my mind that we have accomplished that goal tonight. So thank you again so much for joining us, Liz. If you liked this Science Social, you'll probably like the rest of them. Next month, we have David Trimbach talking about exploring sense of place in Puget Sound. And maybe it's the Mola Mola that makes your heart sparkle, and why you might want to connect more with this beautiful environment. And of course, if you know about it, you're more likely to protect it. So thanks for inspiring us, Liz. We appreciate this talk so very much, and look forward to seeing you around. So again, lots of love coming into the comments, and yeah, super appreciate it.
Awesome.
So
Thanks,
with
everyone.
that, thanks everybody.